Hello, and welcome to the Science on the Seventh live stream, a virtual space where we talk about topics related to air quality and health. I'm your host, Pallavi Pant. For the last few weeks, you have probably heard lots of headlines around wildfires and how they're impacting air quality. And hopefully, what you can see on the screen right now is a visual from NASA showcasing how the smoke that is being generated from these fires is impacting, moving around. And one of the questions that often comes up is if there are wildfires near me, what does it mean for me? What does it mean for my health? What does it mean if I have children or people that live with, chronic diseases or respiratory diseases? And one area of work where we've seen a lot of progress and a lot of advancement is in forecasting air quality. Imagine you wake up in the morning, you get your phone out, and you look at what the weather will be like. Weather forecasting. That's how we know. That's how we also know 2 days from now, I shouldn't plan to go for a hike because it might rain. Similarly, scientists from around the world have been working on creating air quality forecasts that tell us what to plan for in the context of air quality around us. And I'm really excited today to welcome someone who's spent more than 2 decades working on this general topic of air pollution, but also has spent a lot of time working on air quality forecasting and modeling. I would like to welcome Dr. Laurence Rouil, who is the director of the Copernicus Atmosphere Monitoring Services, or CAMS, as we often refer to it, since 2024. She's a mathematician, trained as a mathematician, and has been working now on atmospheric modeling and air pollution for a long time. She was for many years at INRIS, directing strategy and science. And for those of you who are not familiar, INRIS is one of the premier research organizations in France, has produced a lot of the science that we know on air pollution and other topics. She has also been involved in activities relating to science policy, science and diplomacy. She was the chair of the EMEP steering body, which is a scientific organization, again, or a scientific program dealing with air pollution. So clearly, this is something she has thought about for a long time. And Laurence, I'm really excited to welcome you. Bienvenue. We're pleased to have you with us. And I know you're joining us during vacation. So an even more special thank you.
Thank you for the invitation, Pallavi. Very
Thank
happy.
you. Amazing. So I think I like to start, since we talk to people from different places around the world, with, where are you joining us from today?
So today I'm in Paris. I'm at home in Paris, but I'm now in Paris. But this morning and last week, actually, I was in the southwest of France, close to Bordeaux, where I was born. And you've seen on the animation from NASA that you've just shown before, that we had terrible days. So last week, the week before, with wildfires. It happened, suddenly. It lasted for several days. And for the first time, I think, in France, we had something that we could call mega fires. And this is the first time it happens with such an intensity. Not only in France, I have to say, it was the same in Spain. Several parts of Europe were concerned by such events. It was terrible. Actually, it was terrible. Yeah.
Yeah, no, the stories and the images that have been coming out clearly also showcase like the impact that it can have. And I think also, if we just look back at the last few months, especially in Europe, but this has also been true in US and in other places, it's just been incredible. We are experiencing, really intense heat waves. We are experiencing wildfire smoke. I think before I even get to air quality, it's like, how are people coping with this? Because this isn't normal. This is not something that we associate summertime with in most places. What has your experience been?
Yes, it's interesting. This is a very strange year, because in June, CAMS, every 6 months we publish a status, a review of the situations, the wildfire situations everywhere in the world, and we published our mid-year review. It was in June, I would say mid-June, something like that. And the picture that we gave in our publication in June, it was quite optimistic. We monitor wildfires in some parts of the world, of course, in the southern hemisphere, but compared to the past decades, the emissions, the intensity was not so high. So the picture was positive. And few days after, something happened. Wildfires started in Canada. And you remember the end, because also with long-range transport of smoke plumes everywhere in the US, across the Atlantic, in Europe, and also those heat waves that you talked about started in Europe. So for the first time, we had, I would say, sometimes something like three consecutive heat waves in Europe, with amazing temperatures. In France, it was more than 40 degrees in Paris. It's some records have been broken, of course. And what is very strange, what was very difficult to deal with, was the fact that it was very early in the year. Usually, we had some heat waves in the past in Europe, everywhere, in some countries, but more in August. I remember I worked. It was my first, I would say, heat wave I had to deal with. It was in August 2003, but it was in August. This time it was in June, and everybody was taken by surprise with heat waves, which means ozone concentrations rising, so bad air quality everywhere, and also an increasing risk of wildfires because of dry vegetation and dry atmospheric and warm atmospheric conditions. And the fact, coping with that for the authorities, for the citizen, understanding what happens is very difficult. But I think that the most challenging thing that happened this year was the fact that it was very, very early in the year, in summer, at least in Europe.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And actually it connects with sort of maybe my first question on, today's topic, which is forecasting. We obviously know there's huge benefits to being able to forecast the weather and, issue warnings, that we see that very routinely everywhere. And even in case of air pollution now, we see in many cities, including in Paris and in Washington, D.C. a few weeks ago, there were, advisories for air quality will be bad. Here's what you should do. In Delhi, we've seen it. We've seen it in many cities. And I think with these advances around forecasting, we are able to give people advanced information, give suggestions on what to do, what not to do. And since you have worked in this space for a long time, can you take us back to where this started and how we thought of the need for air quality forecasting, and then also what has the evolution been like in the last few decades?
Yeah. Yes, I think that the story started in the 1950s, 60s, maybe, with smoke events that happened of course, in Europe, in the UK, for instance, in London, or in Los Angeles, also in the US. And with that, there is, with such events and acknowledging the impact, the harmful impacts of those events on human health, people, policymakers and scientists started to work together to say, okay, there is something to do. We must monitor what happens. So we must monitor concentrations of those air pollutants. There are pollutants that have really, really harmful effect on health, and we should focus on that. And it started with sulfur dioxide, for instance. And I think that the first forecasting systems were very simple, based on very simple models for sulfur dioxide, for industrial pollution. At the beginning, it was for industrial pollution. And then we realized that ozone was also an issue, and talking about things that happened in the earlier 70s, 60s, and ozone models developed based on improved knowledge of the atmospheric chemistry, and then step by step the system developed everywhere in the world. So in the US, but also in Europe. I can talk about my own experience. You say that I've been working for a long time on that, and it's true that I told you that my first air pollution episode was the ozone episode that occurred in August 2003 in in Europe. And at that time, in my organization, in my former organization in France, we were working also with a national research center on an air quality forecasting system. It was just a prototype, but it worked during this summer. And then the policymakers realized that it could be useful for two reasons. First, to inform the population, and second, maybe to take some short-term actions. Because for some pollutants, if you can anticipate what will happen, maybe you can try to I would say to minimize the impact, reducing the emissions that are responsible for air pollution. So step by step, with those experiments, the systems developed, and now I have to say that you're right, they are operational almost everywhere in the world where there are big issues. And giving quite relevant and reliable results. I have to say that now the air quality forecasting systems are quite reliable. And I think that citizens can consider when there is an alert saying that, okay, you shouldn't do that, sport is not recommended because air pollution will be bad, they should trust what is said, because the systems are quite good now.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And I think we have a picture of one of the forecasts that is produced by CAMS, of course, so we can pull it up. And then also some other forecasts that have been available in the US through NOAA and other agencies. And they have been incredibly useful in planning, as you're saying. But let me go one step further now. Let's say that I'm somebody who's interested in developing air quality forecasts myself. As an organization, what will I need? So what are the fundamental building blocks that would be required in order to do air quality forecasting?
So what you will need, you would need two parts. First, the modeling system that could give you what will happen in the next days. And this, you cannot monitor that with observation. You need a model. You need a model to know what will happen. So that's the first block. The other block is our observations. Our observations can be used also to train some model, to calibrate the model, to evaluate the models. The models are based on equations, very complex equations. Atmospheric chemistry is terrible, thousands of equations, and so sometimes we have to simplify to make some choices. It's not, but we know how to do. The challenging part is how to fit those models, because those equations are based on what we call input data. Input data are meteorological forecasts, so you need meteorological forecast, but you also need information about the emissions, because so atmospheric pollutants are not in the air like that. They come from somewhere, and they come from anthropogenic and natural sources. Anthropogenic, I mean transport, industry, agriculture, residential heating. Natural, I mean in some parts of the world, volcanoes, but also dust, and some wildfires. Not all of them, but some wildfires are natural events due to lightning. So you need to document all this information, also to depending on what is your target area. If this is a city, if this is a country, if this is a continent, you also need an information about what comes from outside your area of interest. So you need to know what is the level of pollution outside, and you need to describe correctly your area with land cover models or things like that. And with all of that, you can manage to run a model to simulate how the air pollutants will behave and to forecast what may happen tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. Or if you are interested in emission reduction scenarios, you can also simulate what may happen in 10 years or in 20 years if we implement some mitigation strategies, for instance. But for that, you need a model.
Yes, no, thank you for breaking that down for us. And it's also, useful to understand that you need lots of different types of input data. And in certain parts of the world where some of those data may still be missing or may still be, being gathered, There is a lot of work that we still need to keep doing. We had a comment in the chat from Bertrand, which I think also adds to what you're saying just now, where he's noting that ozone levels are not as high this time around. And is
Yes.
it because we have put in concerted measures to try and reduce ozone, which again points to the value that some of these models and forecasts can enable us to do and help mitigate sort of the worst case scenarios. I'm curious because this is also a question that comes up in every single conversation these days, professional or personal, which is AI. Can it be helpful with any of the forecasting work? Can we objectively be using it to improve the forecasts? And if yes, then are there things that we still need to be careful about?
Yes, we have started. Within camps, we have started to work with AI system, with data-driven systems, and they work well. In fact, we have some prototypes. We've made some experiments to forecast air quality, air pollutants concentrations, and it's very promising. So there is still some work to do. It's very different from what is done. So in my organization at ECMWF, the European Center for Medium Range Weather Forecast, we forecast the weather, and we do that with physics-based and AI models, and the AI systems perform very, very well, but there are a lot of observations of met variables observations for air quality, for air pollutant concentrations. This is a bit different because there are the networks, the observation networks on which you can build, that you can use to develop your AI system is not so dense, it's sparse, and it's a bit more challenging, but it will work. And we also work with the reanalysis, the very high quality simulations that we've done for the past years that help train the system, the AI system, and it will work. I'm quite confident, but you're right. We should take care to several aspects. First, the quality of the input data, the data that you use to train your system, because you know what is said, rubbish in, rubbish out. So that's the first point. And the other point is, of course, the evaluation of the forecast of the simulations that are built upon AI driven system. It's important to pay really attention, to be very cautious to the quality of the outputs of the results and the forecast. So you have to develop, I would say, a quality assurance framework, a stringent quality assurance framework to implement the AI system. And we work on that. Many teams actually work on that because the first results that we get are very promising.
No, that's fantastic, and I'm actually curious as you were describing it. I'm wondering. So let's imagine you are now doing forecasting next year for air quality in parts of Europe, for example. But this year has been such a anomaly in some way, or like a disruption, both in terms of meteorological parameters, but also what that has meant for air quality with wildfires and other things. How do forecasting systems take that into account? Because it's not yet a pattern. It is a one-time thing. I'm just curious, would it make it harder for next year? Would it help you have more data on what happens when these anomalies happen, and how does this get treated?
That's very, very interesting question, in fact. What you have to keep in mind is that those short-term forecasting systems, finally, they use the data that we have at the D-Day. It's true that the AI systems are trained with reanalysis from the past year, but they are also trained with information that is gathered during the D-Day or a few days before, or things like that. We also use observations, and for instance, what relates to wildfires, Earth observations is really a game changer, because with Earth observation we can really monitor where Wi-Fi's develop, how they develop, how intense they are. We can monitor what we call the fire radiative power and associated emissions, and we put this information in our forecasting systems in near real time. So in fact, the forecasting systems are updated in almost near real time. It means that when we gather information, even if it's an anomaly, if this is something that is not usual, like for instance dust event, you never know when it happens, but when you have the information, you can put it in the forecasting system and it takes that into account for the next days. So this is how we work. This is really a short-term approach.
No, that's fascinating. I think, and it also means that you're, both based on the types of input data you need and how you're making adjustments on a sort of near real time basis, that you must require a lot of coordination across agencies, across disciplines, and also across, countries or administrative units, at least in some instances. And are there examples from your work in recent times where coordination or better communication and engagement across disciplines or across agencies has helped us do better forecasting or use the data for more meaningful action?
Yes. I would say, if I would dare, I would say that air pollution or air quality management forecasting is almost an ideal case, because this is an area, an environmental field, which is one of the most regulated. Everywhere in the world, there are regulations that set some limit values for air pollutant concentrations, not all of them, but the most important. And it means that this is something that is really taken into account by authorities, by countries and local authorities, which means, because they cannot do anything alone, this is behind this is science, the dialogue between science and policy for air quality issues, air quality concern, is quite high. And it's true that now the policymakers, for instance, I would give the example of the European regulation. It's stated in the air quality directive that some decisions could be taken into account on the basis of air pollution or air quality forecasts, which means that this is something written in the law. And this is a very positive aspect, to develop the coordination between the decision makers and the scientific bodies. I would give another example. Is maybe you've said that I've chaired for more than 10 years the scientific body of the Convention on Long-Range Transboundary Air Pollution, which is a convention from the Economic Commission for Europe of the United Nations. And so this is a policy body, but that develop decisions, protocol upon science and upon science assessment. And this is another example, interesting example of the added value of having this dialogue between body. And for CAMS, we need to coordinate, I've said that, with also the in situ networks, but also the Earth observation and space agencies. And that's very exciting. And this is also very promising for the future. And I know that a lot is currently also done in the US with NASA and other body. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think there's, in so many conversations on air quality, this idea of like, yeah, we need more integration and more collaboration comes up. So it's great to see that happen and, see examples of that successfully happening. I think as we come towards the end of our conversation today, I want to also ask you a personal question. Based on the work that you've done, like you've had a really impressive trajectory in your career, and there's lots of people who are now more and more interested in working in space, whether it is, what would be any sort of words of wisdom from you and advice from you for them, especially for any young women who are interested in making a career in this space?
so just first, you say that at the beginning. I'm not at the beginning. I'm not a chemist, an atmospheric composition chemist. Or no, I'm a mathematician. And at the beginning, I was not working for environmental issues. I was working for defense for my PhD. So it was very different. But with mathematics, you can go everywhere. So the first thing I did is thinking that I wouldn't spend all my career working for a field that I do not believe in. I try to do something else, and just accepting to learn, not maybe to apply what I've learned in the past, but to learn new things, to listen to new people, to listen to new experience. Bertrand says something. I worked so many years with Bertrand, and I learned so much from him because he's an actual atmospheric chemistry scientist. And working all together, because you cannot do anything alone, of course. So working all together, this is a key also to expand your field and to expand your panel or your range of will of what you want to do. So just I decided to do that, to learn, to listen, to try, to experiment. Of course, you need a bit of luck because you have also to find the good people who trust you, but you also have to convince them that you can do the work and you can bring your contribution. What I would like to say is that I gave a quite positive picture about the situation because we've made a lot of progress also for decades, but there is a lot that remains to be done. This is not the end. We need to improve. There are things that are not very well understood yet. We can further improve our air quality forecasting system. We can be more ambitious in our mitigation strategy. So we need good scientists, physics-based scientists, AI scientists. We need environmental scientists. So there is some space to develop a wonderful, a beautiful career in that field.
That's amazing. And I love the fact that your training and what you do has kind of come together in a really nice way. I think as we finally come to a close, clean air is a wicked problem. We often say that it's very complicated to deal with. It's not a linear fix this and you'll immediately fix everything. But are there things that give you hope for a future where everyone around the world is breathing clean air?
Yes, yes, I would say yes, because honestly, what I've seen for now almost 20 years, 25 years, is that in some parts of the world, not everywhere, but in Europe, for instance, air quality has improved compared to the situation that we had at the beginning of my career. Really, it means that when policymakers, when countries, when cities decide to implement mitigation strategies for air pollution, it works. And the effects are visible in a quite short term because 1 decade, 2 decades, this is nothing. So it means that regarding our health, the health of our environment, of ecosystems, there is some hope. We should continue. A lot remains to be done, once again, but a lot has already been done, and it works. So this is, yes, we need to push that. Of course, for some field, we didn't talk about the linkages with climate. There are strong linkages with climate change, of course, and we need to keep an eye, to pay huge attention to what happens with climate, to be sure that climate change do not offset all the good things that we have achieved with air pollution. So this is something that we should work on together. But maybe I'm a bit optimistic, but I think that there is some hope.
Yeah, no, I feel like we need optimism, and I do agree with you. We've seen tremendous progress, and it's looked different in different places, because some places have already seen improvements in air quality. Other places have not seen improvements yet, but they're seeing the early signs of let's create legislation, let's create management plans, let's think about what to do. And in some sense that is progress, and you are absolutely right. we cannot lose our sight of the ways in which air pollution and climate intersect. We're seeing that unfold in every day, in our lives right now, but also how do we ensure that the gains we've made are not lost? So I really hope that you will continue to, lead the work that you're doing at CAMS and all the other engagements. I think my takeaways from this conversation are, one, forecasting is a great tool that can help us plan and prepare for what's coming tomorrow, but also what might be coming in the next 5-10 years, which is fantastic. There are places where we still do not have the data that can enable us to do really good forecasts, so we need to keep pushing for that and create more data linkages. And then third, we're going to need trained experts and scientists of many different disciplines and varieties and bring them into the conversation. So thank you so much, Laurence. Je vous remercie.
Oh, thank you. Merci.
We really hope that a lot of this work gets used in decision making, and really appreciate all you do.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup.
And everyone listening in, thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to be back in September with another conversation, and we'll see you then. Until then, stay safe. Thank you very much.